Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. As today, we will be breaking down and giving our initial thoughts on episode 6 and the finale of the newest and most anticipated Walking Dead spin-off series. Following Michonne and her search for Rick Grimes, and of course, following Rick Grimes himself, while he tries to coincide and eventually escape the grasp of the CRM. Of course, being The Walking Dead The Ones Who Live. And episode 6, the finale, being titled The Last Time. And the finale begins just where the previous episode ended off, as Michonne and Rick, now engaged, drive the helicopter back to the CRM's Cascadia base, as Michonne will use Jadis' old uniform to sneak her way through the base and into Jadis' room to get the dossier, while Rick meets with Thorne and eventually meets with General Beale to finally get the Echelon Briefing. So once they arrive at the base, they split up and head to do what they must, as Rick reunites with Pearl Thorne and says that their helicopter was struck by lightning during the storm, and Dana saved his life, but of course not herself. And Pearl eventually brings Rick into the woods as Major General Beale awaits, wanting to speak with him. All while Michonne sneaks her way into the base and into Jadis' room. And like I mentioned before in the previous episode, we can see that Jadis used Gabriel's last name of Stokes, even though they never officially got married or anything. Beale and Rick meet in the woods while Beale is taking out walkers on the fence line, something that he normally doesn't do or really has ever done himself, as he's never had to work to become a citizen. A very brief interaction here, but Beale does say something very similar to what Rick's father said when he was a kid. The sword that kills is a sword that brings life. As Rick's father said, some things have to burn to start something new and something better. Back to Michonne as she frantically searches Jadis' room for the hidden dossier. There is a few Easter eggs right here actually. We all know that Jadis was an artist, and there is tons of art in this room calling back to that. However, some of these drawings or paintings are of actual characters as well, as we see quite a few of Beale himself, but also we can see a few of Gabriel as well. Anyways though, Michonne ends up finding the dossier hidden inside of a sculpture of a cat. Another piece of art that we saw Jadis take part in and create was sculptures. Now, after reading through the dossier that Jadis had written out, Michonne tears it into pieces for no one to ever find out what it read. But as she's getting ready to head back out, another soldier enters the room thinking that Jadis was in there. So Michonne is forced to take her out. And this all brings us into the beginning of Rick's Echelon Briefing, as Major General Beale orders Rick to place his gun and his prosthetic hand on the table and away from him, leaving him from having any weapons that Beale knows of. Beale says something along the lines of what is the worst that you have done to someone in order to survive, and we get callbacks to moments such as Rick killing Shane and Rick killing Joe and his crew. Major things that he has had to do in order to survive, but most importantly, protect those that he loves. Beale has also done some things as well. He was actually the reason that Pittsburgh fell and everyone there died, including those that he knew, much like the bombings on Atlanta and Los Angeles, which were done by Okafor. Beale starts explaining this whole Echelon Briefing, and he does reveal to Rick that they were the ones that took out Omaha. And he also mentions the campus colony that was also eliminated, which was seen in World Beyond. They plan to do the same exact thing to Portland Portland and in the next coming weeks, so that they can become the most powerful organization in the entire world. And after Portland is gone, they will march across the country and take out any other communities or groups that may pose any sort of threat or competition to them, and also take their resources. This, of course, puts Alexandria and the Commonwealth at risk. They have done everything that they can. Their scientists have studied, and they have even provided them with test subjects. Again, recalling World Beyond once more. But nothing has changed, and it's been determined that within the next 14 years or so, everyone will just die, and the entire planet will begin another cycle. No more humans, years of decomposing, and then new species, and all of that sort of stuff. So, Beale's plan is to quote-unquote beat the odds. While the briefing is going on here, Michonne stumbles into a theater room where another mandatory briefing or meeting is taking place. This is where they discuss their attack on Portland itself. They plan to extract children first from the city with the spies that they have in place at the city, and then they will liquidate the city and the rest of its population. And them extracting children is why we actually saw a few soldiers wheeling in crates of children's toys and stuffed animals earlier in the episode. So after seeing all of this, Michonne triggers a walkie while Rick is still getting his briefing. After all of their plans take place, Beale says that they will put their city into martial law. So he takes his beloved sword, places it on the table, and tells Rick to swear on it. Now in both Michonne and Rick's minds, they have to stop Beale and the Civic Republic military right here and right now. So Rick's hesitation to swear on the sword stops, and he instead attacks General Beale. And they get into a very short scuffle, as Rick overpowers Beale and ends up killing him just like that. He then walkies Pearl after and lies to her about Beale, saying that he went back to the woods to take out more walkers by himself, and he gave Rick a job already. Sneaking his way out of the building after killing Beale, Rick runs into even more problems as another soldier enters the elevator with him and takes notice of the blood that is dripping out of the crate that is actually holding Beale's body. So now these two get into a fight, and this one was pretty brutal as Rick uses that extra power from his new hand to take this guy out. Michonne and Rick then reunite themselves and come up with a plan, and something that Nat actually taught Michonne himself. They will tie the M67 grenades to all of the chlorine gas being held in the tent outside. However, Rick is very anxious to just get home, but they have to finish their plans here and save all of the innocent lives that are about to be taken. But their plans are not going unnoticed, as Pearl Thorne is starting to catch on that something is wrong. Now, when she enters one of these rooms, first we can see that Rick actually leaves his prosthetic arm behind. But in the other room with the whiteboard in it, you can see the words PPP exceptions written on it. We all know of the triple P cards and how they are one of the biggest unanswered questions in the Walking Dead franchise as a whole. And unfortunately, even though we can see that Easter egg here on the whiteboard, it still goes unanswered. Anyways though, now with their trap in place, using the walkers of Beale and the other soldier to activate the grenades, Rick gives Michonne Beale's sword as a gift, and they lure the walkers towards them and get ready to leave for good. But Thorne catches them all a bit too late, however, as the now zombified Major General Beale exits the tent and the grenades go off, causing a massive explosion and setting off the chlorine gas, taking out the entire base and everyone in it. Besides Rick and Michonne, of course, who hide under a tarp, and Pearl Thorne, who was able to get a gas mask. Thorne initially fights with Rick before he gets dragged away by a group of walkers and then gets into it with Michonne, who obviously is going to overpower her with her insane sword skills, as she ends up stabbing Thorne and telling her that love does not die. However, another explosion goes off right where Rick was, and for a brief second it looks as if Rick may be dead, but of course he can't be. As he walks out from the crates, Thorne, in what we can assume are her last moments, gives Rick her gas mask and says that Beale was wrong. The CRM is now no more, and now it's just the CRC, the city, and the citizens. Everyone has free reign now and can come and go as they please. Portland has been saved from destruction, and now the CRC will take in any people or communities that wish for aid. As we then see a walkie-talkie go off as Michonne calls for Shoto. This is Judith. Rick and Michonne's helicopter lands in the middle of a field, and they finally reunite with their children for the first time in so many years. This was truly a great moment. RJ still refers to Rick as the brave man, but Rick adjusts his hat just as he used to do for Carl and tells him to call him Dad. They knew Rick would come back because they believed. Now reunited and as a family once more, helicopters fly overhead carrying supplies, likely to places such as Alexandria and the Commonwealth. So I suppose this does actually mean that Carol was telling Daryl that Rick came back in the first season of Daryl Dixon, and that all of our other theories about that were likely wrong. However, I do hope we get to see Rick reunite with all of the other characters as well, but this is where the episode, and theoretically The Ones Who Live, ends off. Now, I have actually seen quite a bit of mixed reviews for the finale, and I'm sort of stuck in the middle, I guess I could say, as I can see both sides of the fandom, those that loved it, and those that may be just a little bit let down by it. I will say that the overall conclusion to the story, like finally having Rick and Michonne reunite with each other and then their kids, was amazing, and I had absolutely no issues with that. However, I do think, or I wish that we just got a little bit more story and exploration of the entire CRM storyline, especially with Major General Beale. He was meant to be this big bad, as was the CRM. For all these years they were built up, and in the finale, they kind of just get wiped out. It makes sense to wrap things up in my opinion, but I do think it was done quite fast. I was actually shocked that they actually wrapped everything up in this episode with how everything else was going for the rest of this season. And speaking of the rest of the season, every other episode was absolutely incredible. There are, however, still some unanswered questions, such as what of Beale's son? What will happen with Elizabeth Kublek now? What does the Triple P card really mean? Will we actually get to see Rick reunite with other characters, such as Daryl, Morgan, and Negan? And was this truly the end to these characters and their stories? I suppose that we will have to wait and see if those questions end up getting answered ever, as we do still have Dead City Season 2 coming in the future, and of course Daryl Dixon's second season, The Book of Carol, coming this summer. But overall, this episode was a good finale in my opinion, and for me it was an 8 or 8.5 out of 10. I still loved this one, but I did have a few nitpicks with it. But I can't wait for Daryl Dixon Season 2 in the next coming months. But yeah, that about does it for this episode from me at least, but of course I would like to hear your thoughts on the episode and the entire series or season as a whole as well, so make sure to leave them down below. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed our breakdown and review on this episode, don't forget to give it a like, and with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.